Hey, everybody. We are back for Net of Love podcast, and I welcome back Rev Rob, the spiritual minister. Thank you, my spiritual super friend. I got that
Yes.
from you.
Isn't that a great term?
Love
Yes.
it.
A good friend of mine it came about when I first was working at ISD. I really had this idea of the people that were coming on board, the people that were joining us, were kind of part of this team, kind of like a Justice League, if you were, that was coming together. And I always kind of held that in my mind. And then, one of the people that I've becoming close with over the last year also had kind of this same, this kind of, Marvel, all the heroes coming together for one purpose, vision. And we just kind of started, I think she'd said to me something about the Super Friends, and I just started, I just co-opted it. I told her I was going to co-opt it. And I just think it's so cool. It's the best way to kind of refer to, how we all are relating to one another. So
I love that description because I didn't know that before. And it just makes you think like one of my favorites is Captain Marvel with her blue plasma running through her body. And you think of all the spiritual super friends that you have in your 5D world. Um, and they all have these unique gifts, like
right.
these spiritual, like high level gifts that without that person, it wouldn't flow the right way. So you're
Exactly.
absolutely right. It feels like that. So cool.
Because it's especially like in a spiritual community, what you want to do, and if you are helping to lead that community in some way, you want to make sure that you're maximizing everybody's gifts and talents. And what better way to kind of qualify it? Now, I should add that a couple of years ago, we also did a retreat that was a superheroes retreat. This is one of the most fun things we ever did.
You and I
And
should do that because it's so awesome. Or
yeah,
you should do it. And I'll send
it was
people
so
to.
cool. We just started off in the beginning with that, we kind of figuring out who we were as super friends. We couldn't talk about it. We didn't decide our names or anything. So on Friday night, we were just starting to think about our traits. And then as we moved through the weekend, we kind of acquired more and more, all the while making parts of those costumes that reflected whatever trait we were discovering. So it was really, really wonderful. And so by the end, our final session was we all got to put together our superhero costume. We kind of bought, like, I think plastic tablecloths to make us capes, but you had your logo and your little seagull, and it was so fun. And it really, I feel like, illustrated that idea of it's just us maximizing our gifts that we all use together as a team. So
It's a self-love experiment and learning more about yourself in a way you never thought of before. Your own divinity, embracing it.
truly, which is why we didn't want people to like, oh, I always wanted to be the blank on Friday night. It was like, no, you don't. We're gonna do these exercises, and perhaps you're going to discover something about yourself that's a superpower that you didn't even know you had, or that you wanted to explore more fully. So
Awesome. Beautiful. All right. So we are here for the third installation of the Kybalion laws of the universe, principles of the universe that we've been going through over the last few months. And we have started with mentalism, discussing the first one, that all is mental. The Kybalion talks a lot about how science is starting to corroborate this, and that we kind of had gone from more of an understanding that the everything is material. So we're moving really away from the Newtonian physics into more of this quantum physics, which is superstring theory and all this great new potential of multiverses instead of just physical universes. So then we moved on to the law of correspondence. So if you haven't checked those out, they are underneath this one on YouTube, so you can check them out, or on the podcast platforms, you can see them as well at Net of Love. And we are now going to delve into the third principle. So I'm going to hand that over to Rob to talk about that and introduce that, and we'll go from there and see where we spiral up into together.
I love that, spiraling up. I love that. Yes, because I love it. So our principle that we're discussing today is the principle of vibration. Now, the Kybalion, i.e. the Hermetic principle, the Hermetic philosophy says, and it seems very simple. Nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. Now, you hear us talking about our vibration levels all the time, and are we vibrating at a low level or a higher level? The lower level being more our material focus and more grounding in its nature, and then the higher up that we go, the higher we vibrate, the more spiritually attuned we are becoming. But I really love starting to think of this principle in our, very earthly grounded terms. So when we say those words that nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates, we mean everything. So not just the things that look like they might vibrate or that they are vibrating. Everything is in motion. So the most static thing, like your desk or your chair or your phone or your computer, is vibrating at a level, and all the way on up through life forms, plants and animals and air and the sky, and we are vibrating, literally vibrating, with this wonderful energy. So I think that's a really, to apply it to our world means that we can now look through the world and see it as a vibrating unit. And of course, when everything vibrates and you start, going to your macro level, the whole thing is vibrating together. So we're vibrating with those inanimate objects, with everything that's animated, with Mother Earth. We're all there, and we are all vibrating. So,
I wasn't going to say this till later, but I feel like it's a good moment to jump in with this. If anybody's ever read Dolores Cannon, The Convoluted Universe, and she has more than one Convoluted Universe book, and it will bend your mind beyond a spoon. Okay. And what she taught, well, first, not only is the computer in your desk vibrating, but she takes it as far as to say, and so does the Kybalion and other teachings, that our consciousness and our thoughts are vibrating as well. So it's the interplay, it's the dance with the inner and the outer reality. Now we go back to the law of correspondence, as within, so without. They interweave all these laws together. We experience our reality through the consciousness that we are emanating. So she goes as far as to say that when we leave our house and go to work, for example, the house isn't there. It is our consciousness coming back, forming it there. And that's moving more into this, out of the material 3D plane, into this more higher dimensional plane of consciousness is creating reality, this cosmic consciousness that we are floating and kind of, flying through the universe on, but we're literally sitting here and it's the illusion that all of this is in front of us.
yeah,
So I just took it down a really trippy road, but
I love that. So I love the trippiness of it. This is why I enjoy this so much. And I know you mentioned this book the last time, or her work the last time, and now you've just really inspired me to go pursue it, because it is, we are moving through and we are vibrating, and as we move and leave, those things become something else, and we come back to them. And I love the trippiness of it.
Yeah. And another, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Another part of the law of correspondence where this connects into is the in an atom, the movement and the motions that occur within an atom, a molecule. So in the same sense that happens in an atom, that's also happening with our planets around the sun, with the sun around another system, when that system around another system. So we get into the as above, so below concept here as well. And it shows that throughout the entire multiverse, things are moving in motion, which means there's so much potentiality as well.
Yes. And so we're also talking about, so if we are talking about vibration rates, those are degrees of vibration. And I feel like, and we'll talk more about this as we move through these principles, but all of these principles really exist with in degrees of one another, as opposed to being, binary and completely binary in nature. And when vibration was explained to me, and the relativity of it was in talking about in terms of temperature, heat, cold or hot, which are relative terms. What you consider cold in your atmosphere, for instance, or your environment, is not what I consider cold or hot. And we come up with these arbitrary numbers, but it is within these degrees that we have these vibrational levels. So So we are looking at the one thing that can be approached or expressed from different degrees of vibration and motion. So
Yeah. And when we start talking about vibration, and vibration holds a specific frequency depending on the consciousness of what's vibrating. So, and that moves and shifts. So when we talk about the frequencies, you'll see that as hertz, HZ often. So if you look that up, you can see. So just to kind of take this and bring it into everyday terms, and kind of layman's terms, because Rob and I probably learned it more from the esoteric occult teachings, which are now being backed by science, which is really exciting. So when you put those two together, it's finally coming into this like unified field theory, which is really exciting. So when we look at the colors of a rainbow, for example, which is the spectrum that our eye can see, each color has a specific frequency. That is what is making it and causing it to be the color that it is. So the rainbow, you'll hear the rainbow bridge a lot of times. The reason you hear the rainbow bridge is because you're ascending in frequency as you go from red all the way up to the indigo colors. So when we look at the chakras, for example, the if if you're watching this podcast, you probably know what chakras are. But if you don't, just in case, if you're getting Reiki healing or energy healing, and you are looking in at the chakras to see where they are, the root is more of this red frequency. So that's very high, people who have attained a high spiritual potency can see those colors sometimes, depending on someone's gifts, but we can also sense them and feel them in other ways. So they hold a certain vibration. So as you start to ascend your consciousness, you work your way up through those lower chakras into the higher chakras. And it's very similar to a rainbow, but it's also very similar to a keyboard. So one of the ways that I was taught is on a keyboard, you have octaves. So each set of white notes, there's 8 of them, and you take the 12 in the middle, that is one octave. And you can equate shifting in dimension by moving up the octaves into a higher dimension of reality. So if you shifted up your chakras, you've opened all your chakras, it's shifting into the higher octaves of consciousness, which shifts the reality as well. So if you have a monk on top of a mountain meditating every day, he is going to be vibrating very differently than somebody who is living in a stressful scenario, in a city, for example. It doesn't need to be a city, it's just an example. So there's a spiritual attainment that occurs. That is what ascension is we are sending in our vibration to hold a higher frequency in our body, and the body actually changes when that happens. The very high spiritual masters, you're moving from this more carbon-based body to a more silicate-based body, this body of light. Okay. So that I can go on all day about that, but that's just to kind of show you how this equates to ascension and why I always talk about ascension. People are probably like, what are you talking about, Amanda? When I talk about it all the time, but that's what it is. We are ascending into this higher love, by opening these higher frequencies to come within our body to heal us to these really great degrees. And we'll talk about sound healing a little bit and the importance of that. But Rob, I think you wanted to say something. I could tell.
Well, I just, as you're talking about the ascending and ascension, ultimately is the faster we vibrate, the higher rate that we are vibrating, the closer and closer that we are getting to that spirit self. And as they talk about in the Kybalion, that universal etheric place. And so we are moving through ultimately. We're all on a spiritual journey. The more we learn, the higher our vibration level gets. The more we learn how to apply it in our daily life, the higher we vibrate. Our ascension is ultimately ascension back to the all, the everything, the all that there is, which I'm assuming we find when we get there, we've never really left. So it really is, our journey here is just kind of continuing to increase our vibrations and to seek out experiences that do that, so that we continue on this journey ultimately to to the source, to however we see that source.
Beyond the illusion of the two eyes. Yeah. And I think that the biggest piece to point out with the ascension process is if you are constantly in those lower thought forms and feeling hatred and stress and anger, and we know that how that causes disease in the body, a very healthy body is going to be vibrating more of these energies of peace and harmony and love and acceptance. And when we so a lot of times, if we've been in an environment or with groups of friends who were in those lower states and we're trying to climb out of that, we need to shift the crew that we're hanging out with to who are holding a higher vibration, right? There's a reason the hippies said that. I'm a hippie at heart. I think we all are when we get down to it. But
Yes.
that's why when we start an ascension process or an awakening, sometimes it can feel lonely because we're trying to pull ourselves out of these old paradigms and these lower vibrations. And I think it's really beautiful when you start to have a community of people that come together that are doing this work together, because it is profoundly it's profoundly beautiful when beings come into more of this heart resonance versus coming together for talking about people or gossiping or just being in anger states and judgment. So you feel that shift. Your body feels that shift. You're more healthy. You're more in ease. And that is really what ascension is: the techniques and the practices and the life decisions to make that choice, to be the change.
So being the change, you bring up a very good, some very good phrases that we use so that we can be the change, which is our practices and, changing our behaviors. All of this, we learn and we know, but the process of vibrating at a greater speed or higher vibrations as we ascend involves choice along the way. We have to choose this. It's not going to just happen to us. So, when you're talking about a vibration that you are experiencing, if, as you said, if you are involved in a group that seems to be negative or focusing on negative things or things that don't seem as high-minded or as altruistic or however we want to see that kind of involvement in the world, we choose to move from it. We make a choice to experience something that is at a higher vibration level, that does allow us to feel free and joyful or happy or forward moving or kindness and compassion. So, I do believe that as humans in our day-to-day existence, we are confronted each and every day and every moment almost with this opportunity to increase our vibration level, to vibrate at a higher rate. And that comes in the form of every challenge, basically, that we face. So knowing that the world may seem like it's happening to us, but we have our own responsibility to respond in kind in a way that is positive, regardless of what is happening to us. And those choices are how we continue to raise that vibration level, if that makes sense.
It does. And it's hard. It's not easy. It's hard. It's hard work. It's dedication. It's commitment. It's like I think I said in one of my posts last week in my group, it's like a planetary mission from within, right? But it's hard because what happens is when we start to make changes and we start to hold higher frequencies in our body, the people that are around us, either our family or the structures that we had been in, they want to keep us where we were because that's the resonance. That's how people come together. That's how they feel good, right?
And that's what we learned. That's all we
Right.
learned. We didn't learn this from our childhood, or most of us didn't. And now we're in a place where we can begin to think differently, to raise and generations differently, to think differently.
Exactly. And countries have a collective consciousness, right? States have a collective consciousness. So what happens is when different vibrating things come together, so say you have two, right? They'll sync up. They start to sync up. So if two people meet, like you think of a long-term marriage, right? You meet and you're like, oh, this is amazing. But then all of a sudden all this you're like trying to work all this stuff out, and then eventually it syncs up, and eventually there's like a flow that happens in relationships. And this is how group mind is created when we do meditation circles, for example, and we're getting similar imagery. It's like the flying geese in resonance together because we've come together and the energies are oscillating and moving and come into a harmony. But it's all a vibrational harmony. So it's important to be mindful who we're spending our time with, but it's also probably by why women who live together have their cycles at the same time, right? And it's connected into the moon and the earth. They are very much connected and in sync with the movements that they do. So it's powerful when we come into resonance with other people. They can pull us down or they can pull us up. So it's important to be mindful of how you're feeling when you're around certain people. And it's moving away. The tricky part of ascension is that we are moving ourselves away from the collective consciousness that we're currently in. So it's needing to find a different consciousness. And what happens divinely is that when you make these decisions, the people come in that are at a high, that are vibrating a little bit higher. But ultimately, we are all, we all have those same aspects within us. It's just trying to do that climb out of, what they say of more of the Antichrist into the Christ, or those polarities to try to transcend them.
Right. And we have the power to change the vibration in those situations. So when it is manageable, when we feel like we have something to offer, when we can impart something or set an example of living in a way of kindness and compassion, we have the power to shift the vibration of even those who may be living unknowingly in their negative vibrations. There's a point where if it's not going to work, you need to move on, as we've been talking. But we also, once we learn that we can change our vibration and shift our vibration, and that we do not have to be subject to others' vibrations, we can actually impact it. It's a very empowering concept that, oh wait, I don't have to live like this. I can choose to experience this group, this dynamic differently, and thereby, change the vibration for me, which then changes it for everyone. So,
and I empower everyone to be that conscious leader, that divine leader, because we can go cosmically into different areas and different places and different groups and have that influence, not being an egomaniac, but just holding love. Just holding love. If you are in a grocery store and you see a monk walking through the grocery store, believe it or not, he's changing the whole room, whether you understand he is or not. And he doesn't even have to think about it because he's just holding such a high vibration of love, he or she, I will say. So yes, that is an excellent point. And thank you so much for saying that, because when we start that ascension work and then we come up into this feeling of holding high states of love, it's so important to share that with everybody. Nobody gets left behind on the ascension, because we are all one, and we are all part of each other in ways we don't even understand. And
I
that's
love that. I love the supermarket analogy, because that is also, the supermarket, those day-to-day places of existence. This is where these choices happen. So, that monk walking through is changing the vibration, but our vibration is also affected by the fact that we might be standing there annoyed that there's a long line, or that someone's put out a checkbook, or whatever thing that triggers us in those situations is that opportunity that we can go, wow, this is interesting. Why do I feel that little kind of needle-like picking at myself? What is triggering this about me? And can I choose bigger than this? Can I see the world bigger than I'm seeing it? Can I see that person in front of me in a way that is compassionate rather than being annoyed? And, in those moments, we become that monk. We have the power to become that monk, should we so choose. So and for me, this is where the stuff is hard, because it's like, I'm used to getting behind the wheel of a car and cursing when someone cuts me off. And we all might delude ourselves to think, oh, I'm just standing in the supermarket line. Oh, I'm by myself, so I'm thinking all these thoughts and no one heard me. I'm just being annoyed at that person in front of me. Yes, it's easy to think that we can absolve ourselves that way, but if we're gonna move, if we're gonna vibrate, and we're gonna make those leaps, we have to be thinking about this all the time. I'm not saying I do, but I am saying that I understand that that's the way it has to be. Like that's the only way it's going to happen. And we have
Right.
to set that example once we know that we can do it.
Right. And just to give that example of the car and, yelling at somebody or, flipping them the bird or something, that shift is to say, oh, wait a second. I've done that before to somebody by accident. I have that in me too. I know I've done that before. And that's that shift of we all have that, shadow side. We all do. Or
Right.
we make mistakes, we're human. It's the empathy that comes out. Yeah,
Exactly.
beautiful. Yeah, and I think the really cool part is when we kind of shift and start to ascend, we eventually come into the all, right? The I am presence. And that is being in like this beautiful harmonic with the universe. So we can be in harmony with our town, our city, our family, our group, but to really ascend and be in harmony with the universe, that is a whole, and there's, I've experienced that in meditation. I know you probably experienced that in meditation. That's why meditation is so powerful because it spirals us up in frequency. It's very powerful to shift very quickly once a meditation practice is started. And, just like Reiki and sound healing and those avenues, they are based in vibration, and the specific vibration is sending these tones to your body that help it to come into a greater resonance instead of the dissonance with cells in your body. So that's why people feel so darn good after these practices, because of the power of sound and vibration.
Right. So tell me more about, because this is something that I've always been interested in, but I know that you work with this. But the idea of sound healing and sound work is so is I love it because I'm a consumer of it, and so I love to be immersed in sound situations where I'm taken out of myself or above myself or something because of resonating vibrations. So tell me more about what's happening to
Yeah.
me when I'm experiencing those things.
Well, it's similar to like binaural beats that you can get, you can just YouTube them or solfeggios. And these specific beats, your your neurological state and your heart, and your organs come into resonance with those frequencies that are very healing. So when that happens, it shifts the body into a resonance. And we shift, we with the frequencies we already know of, the beta, the theta, the alpha, the theta, and the delta, we're in and out of those frequencies all the time. So if we're constantly stressed out and active in beta all the time, and we're not getting into more of those meditative states, and those higher states, it's not healthy for our body. So that's why when we're breathing and the breath, I mean, the breath holds the vibration. Think about the waves in the ocean and the movement, all those movements when they're done slowly and calmly, and gently, versus putting on a rock song, right? That's tuned to a weird frequency, and the electric guitarist just couldn't get his amplifier right. We feel different. We feel different. So it's powerful. For those who love conspiracy theory, and I always say conspiracy theory is kind of I think a part of the ascension process, but then we kind of climb higher to say, okay, now I'm going to influence versus buy into all these theories. I'm going
Yes.
to inform now. So there's a jump above that we have to get to. Um, if you're going down the rabbit hole of the conspiracy theories, but one of them was that they did it was John D. Rockefeller that led the universal tuning and put it to a 440 hertz. And that was some kind of conspiracy, the evil conspiracy to keep us, in these states of angst and frustration. I don't know that it's that black and white. It could be. I don't know the whole story, but so there's, the talk of the 432 is better because that's connected to Om and the universe, but that's just really where the collective consciousness is resonating, where the earth was resonating. But we're moving, we're ascending. So it's the conspiracy theories will really go deeply into frequency manipulation and that kind of stuff. But we can we can manipulate our own frequencies through these strategies that we just talked about through meditation, through having a Reiki or energy healing experience, through sound healing baths. And what happens often through a shamanic drum journey, right? What happens, you end up going into trance because it shifts your brainwave state so profoundly. And that's when you have a lot of mystical experiences and really deep connections, because you're then coming into resonance with these higher dimensional planes of reality, like we talked about the piano, right? Do re mi fa sol la ti do. You're not at the bottom do anymore, you're at the high do now. So
Mhm.
it's a whole nother experience that occurs through your conscious perception of reality. So I don't know if that was long and short of what you were looking for, but
It is. I love the experience. I mean, I love being immersed. I love music, and you know, it's how we raise our vibration level all the time. People have, everybody makes playlists for what they like to do. We all have our favorite, our favorite music for what we need. We go to the gym and we put on certain workout music. We need to relax and we put on music that makes us feel soothed. All of those are about, uh, being conscious of our vibration level and making choices that can make it move in the ways that we desire it to move. So, uh, if you don't think you're doing it all the time, you are doing it all the time. We are making choices all the time. And can we make them more and more conscious so that we don't get stuck anywhere that we don't want to be?
but it's really funny because right now, like your dog barking, right? What happened to your body? You're like, wait a minute.
Yes, for so many reasons.
I'm
Yes.
doing a podcast right now. So it's funny, like it happens when my dog barks too. I'll be in meditation. It's like, and the whole thing shifts, right? And then I got to go back in, I got to center, I got to quiet. It's just like when we're triggered, it's the same thing. So if we can just observe instead of respond, and you handled that beautifully, you're like, what are you going to do? Right.
Well, I tell you, the doing our stuff online and being at home really was a wake up call for me in leading meditations and meditating myself. I as much as the reason I think I tensed up was because I let my guard down on knowing that they were going to bark. I'm usually very aware of their presence, and so I feel like I'm more able to guide people through it if it barks. If we're going into meditation, I will warn people that if they do, we may feel startled, but let's just use that as a sign that we can go even deeper. So it's just that guidepost that's like, okay, I'm jarred, but I can go deeper, because ultimately our goal in this stillness, in getting our vibrations to where we want them to be, is not to have to be in a quiet room with no other sound and nothing else going on. We want to be able to do this in the most, crazy of chaotic experiences, because that's how we're going to move through it and choose to be above it. So, like I want to be able to say, bring it on. And because that just means that I'm more challenged to be still with inside of me rather than rely on creating situations that may or may not be practical as we move through our day.
Right. And those are all of our initiations, right? The Kybalion is all about the initiates, right? We are all initiates on this earth plane. And it is constantly this moment to show our mastery of how we doing now, right? I keep responding this yucky way to the same stimuli over and over again. A lot of times it's trauma responses. But a dog barking in your ear for 30 minutes, it's a little annoying. For
Right.
example, just as an example, it was divinely orchestrated dog barking. But it really brought us to this conversation of how we can hold these states when we are being triggered. And a lot of it is just hold space for a little bit, just feel it out. We don't have to respond immediately to everything. And that takes time, that takes practice until we are walking around, more like an ascended master where nothing triggers us anymore.
Right. Well,
We're going to get there. I know we are.
it's great you should say that, because I was just talking today earlier about and I know that you follow this person, but I don't want to talk about this person by name. But there is a person who's a metaphysical leader, and he posts a lot of Instagram posts that he has a lot of spiritual truths. Recently, I've found some of his Instagram posts are a little seem to be a little angry slash judgmental slash triggering in nature. And when he posts and people respond because they're triggered, his response to those posts and that negativity is, look, if I've triggered you, that's on you. That is not on me. So, you don't need to be leaving me all these negative comments, but what you can do is take a step back and ask yourself, hey, why am I triggered by what this person said? And I feel like while I do find he does seem to be polarizing, it's one of the few times that I've been able to kind of laugh and realize, oh wait, I'm triggered by this. And then he's telling me immediately, like, look, if I've bothered you, that's your problem, and that's your to deal with. And I agree with it. It's like, oh God, he's right. So he's actually proving his point because people are responding, and you can see people responding to whatever he says. And it's usually something that is really like hard ass, like this is the way it is, kids. Like we can talk about these metaphysics, but this is a truth that you can't avoid, and you need to look at this in a very real way. It's what I often want to be able to say to a community, but I can't necessarily say it. So it's very id-like in how he expresses something that I've always felt. But I marvel at the response. It's one thing to look at kind of trolling in the internet world where we've kind of gotten used to it. When we're talking about spiritual and metaphysical stuff, trolling still happens, triggering still happens. And so either we are triggered or we're doing the triggering. And I feel like, we can't, as you said, his point always is, look, when you are aligned, nothing will trigger you,
Mm-hmm.
period. Um,
Divine union. Yeah.
it's conversations with God. You can go everywhere that says, look, the reality is we cannot be hurt. You cannot be hurt. We cannot be hurt unless we allow that hurt to happen. When everything is aligned, what I say will not affect you.
Mm-hmm.
It's coming to that place. Maybe we've had to do it in relationships where you just have to like allow bring it on with the negativity, allow it to happen so that you can realize, oh wait, what you're saying means nothing. Because if it resonates, then I'm going to take it in and I'm going to change and I'm going to make changes. If it doesn't resonate, there's no reason for me to hold on to whatever is triggering. So
Yeah.
it's a powerful process knowing that, oh wait, I cannot be hurt. Or if I'm feeling hurt or triggered, why am I? What that person, who cares what that person's intention was? Who cares what they said? Who cares what they did? Ultimately, I'm responsible for my own well-being, no matter what happens. So
Even, and I think fear is a big piece of that. The getting past the fear. To give an example, we had our pressure tank for our water kind of died, so we need to get a new one. And they're expensive and blah blah blah. And maybe in the past I probably would have been like, oh no, da, 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 da. But I was just like, what? See where this goes. It's going somewhere. Everything happens for a reason. Everything's divinely orchestrated, divine time. I've really been able to kind of hold that for most of my days at this point. And I got to tell you, the ways that it played out and the people I ended up getting to talk to because of it, and what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks, the magic is beyond my
awesome.
understanding. So, like, we can't, like, we get so tied up in one little thing sometimes, but we don't see the bigger connection of how the dance is happening in really neat ways that we sometimes just don't see. Don't
Right.
see.
You met
We see
somebody who
from up
says
here,
that,
though.
right. But that's hard to do when the roof's leaking and
Right, right.
feels like the roof's leaking is what the problem is or what any. But weeks from now, when the roof's fixed, when the water pressure's fixed, and everything's fine, and you're not even thinking about what there's a problem, will you remember that the next time something happens that
Yeah.
you have to
And hold the gratitude for having a really warm house that doesn't
yeah,
have
exactly.
issues, right?
That says something to the alignment. When we're not feeling that sense of dis-ease, we're aligned. So that is unfortunately, as many say, you can't work to get this feeling. You have to release to get this feeling. You can't search for this. You have to let everything go in order to experience it. Because when we're experiencing it, we will not be looking at the world as separate or different or binary in any way. So
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think this is a great spot to just kind of talk a little bit for a minute. Like, how does an entire collective consciousness of humanity shift? Right? If we're talking about vibration, how does that happen? It happens by little pop-ups here and there of these shifts, because there might be some who have really kind of gone out of that and are holding their own field completely. They're probably not interacting with too many people from such a high plane, or they are, and you're just really able to walk through through life without withholding that high resonance of love in the heart. And the more people that do that over time, the more we all move together. But again, we don't move if we don't change. So that's why, Gandhi, be the change you want to see in the world. It's more powerful than we can ever understand. That's why I say it's a planetary mission from within, from
It
within.
is, and it's one that requires the tenacity, is because, as we say, let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. Look, you may be able to look at the world and think, oh, this person's not vibrating the way I am, or I could never get to be this vibration, or I'm never going to get there, or I'm doing it and they aren't. Look, the minute we start worrying about somebody else's vibration level is the minute that we are not worrying about our own. So the
Right.
way that it's going to happen is that we just do it. We just do it. And when we do it, and we're not looking over our shoulders just to see who's, vibrating higher or lower, we can set an example. We can show our collective that this is the aspiration. So we can become that aspiration.
And that's multidimensionality. We talked about the keys on the piano. We are multidimensional. So we are going to go in and out of these frequencies and we are going to have moments. So, what I empower everybody to know is that just because you might feel like you're going down one day, we're overall ascending. So you might have a bad week or a bad month. It doesn't mean you're not ascending anymore. I think it was Lori Ladd that I saw her say that one time, and it was so profoundly true. We are ultimately all ascending, and so is the planet because we are in resonance with her. We are in resonance with her consciousness. You give it a female name, but everything is male and female. But it's masculine and feminine, not gender based.
Mhm.
The primordial energies of the universe. You know what I mean? But and
Yeah.
and our viewers who've watched this from the beginning would too. So that's really great. But we are moving. We are moving, and we are evolving, and we are expanding. And it's okay to don't beat yourself up if you're not if you did flip off somebody. I don't recommend doing it, but if you did,
Right. So
you
right. So
yelled
there.
and you lost your crap because
Right.
your kid had a meltdown that morning and you found out you had a leaky roof. I mean, give yourself a break.
All the
Hold
above.
yourself with love.
Right. So, and the break comes from, knowing that in the moment. You can't do it once it's happened, but can you be conscious of it the next time that it happens? And also, if we're going to go to the multiverse route, because I love the multiverse, did you see Everything Everywhere All at Once? Just a brilliant, brilliant movie.
Brilliant
So,
name.
exactly. But I
That's
mean,
the
the fact
power of
is,
my own presence.
we might think that we've quote unquote, not, had that vibration level. We might have quote unquote failed in a moment. But the fact is, in the multiverse, we've had that moment of success or victory at the exact same moment that we had the failure on another plane. So it is happening. It is all happening at the same time. So whatever, whatever gnarliness you may be feeling, know that in the parallel plane, you are not. And actually, now that when you know that, then you know that you can choose differently for this plane as well. So
And self-judgment is a lower vibration. So you're adding on to it when you start judging yourself for it. And we cannot be light of heart and ascend. Like I think I might have talked about the scales of Ma'at before, but it's when our heart is weighed against a feather and we're as light as a feather is when we can experience these higher dimensions of
right.
radiation. So the judge and the jury that, if we believed in that authoritarian, male, masculine, judgmental God, we've talked about this, and we have that imprint within us and how we relate to ourselves. That's why I say self-love is the key to ascension. It's the key to ascension because we need to embrace our divinity even when we are having a human moment. So
Absolutely. It is all about that, realizing that we're divine. We are. And I pulled out a great quote from the Kybalion that says this very thing, which is, we do not live in a world of dreams, but in a universe which, while relative, is real so far as our lives and actions are concerned. Our business in the universe is not to deny existence. I think this is so important because we're not saying don't live in this earthly realm. We are here for a reason. Not to deny its existence, but to live, using the laws to rise from lower to higher, living on, doing the best that we can under the circumstances arising each day, and living as far as possible to our biggest ideas and ideals. So, that sums it up. It's not about saying that we are trying to release ourselves from this world. We're in this world, but our growth, our journey is about working with this world to ascend. I just think that's so freeing. And, to the best of our abilities does mean, I think, the more we know, which we're all seeking, the more we have then we have to act on. So, that is part of the process. The knowledge is one thing, and then in a human world, it's applying that knowledge and making those choices when we know. So,
Right. And I think it's self-love, but I think it's also present now moment because you can be, I am everything that ever was, will be, and everything everywhere, like you said, in any present moment, in the next present moment, in the
yes,
next present
next
moment.
moment, because that's all
And
there is. That's all there is.
some very high level teachings is you're literally reprinting your consciousness in the hologram by holding that present now moment, keeping the lights on without going into those, lower thought forms, the
Yep.
fear, the shame, the guilt, the hatred. If you can keep your present moment, it's a great Eckhart Tolle piece, right? You are in that moment, you've ascended.
Right,
You've
exactly.
ascended.
Right.
You're
Just
there.
hold on to that moment every moment, and that's where we'll get
Keep
there.
reprinting
Yes.
it. And the
So,
more
yes.
you reprint it, the present moment, the more you will hold it over time. Our beautiful residents, my super friend. I trust you implicitly when we do this. You say what I would have said, and I just thank you so much for
Thank
this.
you.
I appreciate it so much.
Really wonderful. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity and for our working together. We knew what was going to happen, and here we
Yeah,
are.
from
So,
the beginning, right? I love your
yeah,
vibe, brother.
love yours. I love your sister, my spiritual super friend.
Yes. All right, everybody. Thank you. We'll come back together for the next one
All right.
and take some time to integrate some of this. And as always, if you have questions, you can send them to netofloveiam@gmail.com. And we will see you next time.
All
Thanks.
right. See you next time.